What's good, y'all? Today we are watching Why Final Self Portraits Are Terrifying by D Burke 321. All right, this is about to be some type of super psychological type ish vid, right? It's about, I'm pretty sure, artists drawing themselves for the last time. You know, whether that be them dying of old age, them being on drugs and dying on drugs, or losing their mental sanity ultimately, right? And I love watching stuff like this. I hope y'all love watching stuff like this too. And if you don't, nigga, sit down and watch it anyway, gang. You feel me? Lock in with me. We about to figure out why it's so terrifying. But let's get straight into the vid, man. That's enough of me yapping.
This is the final self-portrait of Pablo Picasso, fittingly titled Self-Portrait Facing Death. It was created...
That's crazy. I feel like as you get older, because I can't tell, like, looking at this, I can't tell if, like, Pablo Picasso was literally losing his mind and he thought that he actually looked like this, or he was trying to do some art abstract type ish, you know what I mean? So a lot of times it'd be kind of confusing to me seeing these type of like drawing, like self-portraits, and it's supposed to, I be thinking it's supposed to be like realism, but it doesn't necessarily need to, you know? Bro could be like, yo, chopped off half of the head because I feel like I'm no longer fully here mentally type ish, you know what I'm saying? But he do got shark teeth too. Shit, nigga turned into a vampire.
less than a year before he passed away at 91. It took several months to complete and had multiple iterations, but the final piece was a haunting expression of anxiety and dread. His friend, Pierre Dax, was one of the few people to provide commentary for the portrait. When he said, Picasso held the drawing beside his face to show the expression of fear was a contrivance. He later visited again and noticed that this
contrivance? Come on, we need to start using more understandable words, gang. That's the word I don't know. I don't know that one. I like to think I'm a pretty smart nigga. I be knowing a lot of things. A lot of random, unimportant things, to say the least. But I be knowing a lot of words too. You know what I mean? Contrivance? Nah, bro, you lost me there, gang.
This time, the lines in the portrait had gotten deeper and darker, a change that also reflected Picasso's mind state. He did not blink. I had the sudden impression that he was staring his own death in the face, like a good Spaniard. A few months later, Picasso would pass
What you mean by that? What you mean by that, gang? Like a good Spaniard.
away, and this was one of his most talked about pieces, an iconic artist's interpretation of his own demise and a final self-portrait to encapsulate the angst and existentialism that comes along with it. That's just an introduction of what I wanted to
Also, nigga, I could have drew that shit. I'm gonna keep it aside. Pablo Picasso, you know what I'm saying? He one of the great, artists and stuff, but I could have drawn that shit. You know what I mean? Shit. I'm about to become an artiste. No cap.
show you to
Speaking of art, hey, and this is coming straight off of me saying that I could draw something that Pablo Picasso could draw. So please bring it down a level, please. Please bring it down a level with me. Right, but speaking of art, y'all see this boy right here. Wait, not that one. This one. You see that? These gonna be my new toys I'm dropping. My little art toys. Yeah. I made this myself. I downloaded a 3D software, learned how to use a 3D software just so I could make this doll with a fucking bag over its head. I'm a real artiste, no cap. But anywho, yo, let me know if y'all will cop these. Let me know in the comments. If you think it's trash, it is a bag. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It is a bag. So, but hey, don't say that though. Don't say that though. If you think it's trash, keep that shit to yourself, gang. Keep that shit to yourself, because I don't care. Actually, I do. If you think it's trash, just tell me you think it's trash. Also, I really don't give a fuck. I think this shit hard. But anyway, if y'all want to cop one of these Bag Boy toys, go to the Instagram for Bag Boy Toys. Drop a follow. I will be dropping them soon. I'm probably just only going to drop 30 at first. So if you want to be part of the first little 30-piece drop, You know, follow the Instagram so y'all can see when that happens. But anyway, let's get back into the vid, man. I know I'm really like Pablo Picasso with the motherfucking bag head, you feel me? But anyway, let's get to it.
Today, because in this video I want to talk about the concept of the final portrait, the dark, strange, and disturbing world of an artist's last time creating a piece that is a direct reflection of themselves. It has happened time and time again, and they're almost always different. Some of them show the mind deteriorating, some of them show their bodies given up, and you might even see a glimmer of hope or curiosity for what's on the other side. It's an incredibly specific type of art, but it's one that I think should be explored. So today I'm going to show you a few examples of the final self-portrait and the disturbing world around it. William Udermolen was an American artist who came to prominence in the 1960s and 70s because of his figurative art. He created pieces that were reflections of the world around him.
It's pretty hard. This looks like, you know how you be cutting out images of stuff and putting them on other things? Like, cause it looks like the faces, like these could be pictures. You know what I'm saying? Like you could have literally got a picture, cut it out, you know, placed it on top of a painting, and it would look like this because the faces, the body, that shit look real good. So let's see how he deteriorates over time. I think it's deteriorates over time. But let's see.
Realistic paintings that were defined and to the point. Occasionally he dabbled in other styles of art, but this is what he was most known for. He also created many self-portraits throughout his life. This is one that he created in 1967 when he was 33 years of age. William began to suffer memory loss in 1991, and his work began to reflect that. He created a series of paintings called the Conversation Paintings, which are said to be his attempt to remember the life he had before he was diagnosed. In 1995, he was told that he had early onset Alzheimer's disease, and that it might only be a matter of time before his mind was completely gone. That sparked a new series of paintings that would go on to be so—
Speaking of that shit sounds terrifying, bro. Like imagine, like you can no longer do the things that you used to do. You can't even think the same. You can't remember things. You can't, like you're no longer yourself. Like you're always a being that is learning everything around them for a short period of time. If that makes sense. I don't know if I really just, you know, went all over the place. But you're like a being that is only living in the present and always learning new things, but instantly forgetting those new things. And it's like, for the person that's forgetting everything, it might not be such a problem, because imagine, you know, you're forgetting everything, so it's not necessarily something where you know, or maybe you do know that you're forgetting things, and maybe that can cause stress. But for the most part, it's probably not too stressful. Then again, what the fuck do I know? I'm over here making super guesses. Holy shit. I'm over here talking about Alzheimer's, and I'm saying it can't be too bad. I'm tweaking. My bad, y'all. My bad. I'm sure that shit terrible. I'm not gonna lie. But in my brain, I feel like I can, you know, kind of think of a possibility that it wouldn't be too bad. But what the shit do I know, man?
Some of William's best known work, a series of self-portraits that would be created while he had developing Alzheimer's. Although there are quite a few of these pieces, there are 5 that are especially known. The first one is from 1996. This portrait is fairly true to William's style, and it's consistent with the works we have seen previously. A year later, he created this. Again, it doesn't seem to be terribly far off. William has seemingly aged quite a bit here, at least.
That's kind of crazy though, I'm not gonna lie. Like his art, I feel like that was a pretty big switch if you ask me.
By his own self-reflection. In 1998, things had clearly changed, and we can see this through his self-portrait that he created that year. We see a face of anguish, unconnected to a body, staring at us bleakly. It's obvious that things have taken its toll, and there are 2 more pieces to look at. Unfortunately, they do not get better. This was the painting we saw in 1999. Instead of a bleak expression, we see no expression, an image that can barely be described as a face at all. There are some minor attempts made to create a background and some semblance.
This is kind of scary, I'm not gonna lie. That shit, oh, this shit kind of scary. Cause, damn. But still, like, I'm thinking in my head, like, is this him, like, actually trying to draw his own face, or is this him trying to draw his mental state, in the fact that he can't really make things or put things together, and can't really see the bigger picture, basically. Or is this like him actually trying to draw his own face? You know what I mean? That's something that kind of racks my brain, honestly. But this is terrifying. This is actually terrifying, for real.
Of color. A year later, we see the final piece, and all of that goes away as well. This is what we are left with. The final self-portrait that William has created, and his last attempt at creating anything in the world of art.
This is terrifying because of the fact that he probably really, forgot how to paint. He probably forgot how to paint, forgot how to draw. You know what I mean? Like, this is him probably trying to pull from what he knows. You know what I mean? But it's kind of like he doesn't know it anymore. That's sad. Like, losing your art, something you put your whole life into. And, all of that talent, skill that you built up over the years, literally leaving your body, and you can't do anything with it anymore. That's
a creator who was expressive, detailed, and able to accurately reflect the things around him has now been stripped of all of that, and this image is the clearest example of that. It's amazing that William even had the foresight to do this and see it through. This is arguably his most famous series of creations, and it came from such a terrible place. But being the artist that he was able to turn it into something with an immense amount of meaning that would be talked about for years to come. William faded into obscurity after this to deal with his illness, which rapidly got worse. In 2007, he passed away from pneumonia at a nursing home in West London. But many people around him said that the real William was gone well before that, and this series of self-portraits was his final artistic expression, and the last time he showed a semblance of who he truly was. Brian Charnley was an English artist born in 1949 who attended the Central School of Arts in London, but was forced to drop out early when he was diagnosed with acute schizophrenia. This diagnosis greatly shaped his style, and he used his art to express the hardships, confusion, and mental anguish that came along with having paranoid schizophrenia. In his later years, Brian was getting frustrated with the lack of success that his art brought him, and believed it was because he was too heavily medicated to the point that it stopped any chance he had of making headway in the world of art. He decided to lower the dosage of medication that he would take. He also decided to create a series of self-portraits while he did this, and document the process through his art. This has become his most famous series of paintings by far, but unfortunately it does not have a happy ending. Still, let's look at some of the paintings in question and see what Brian was creating. There are 17 portraits on his website, and he wrote about each one in his diary, which is also on his site.
Wait. So he only had 17 portraits ever, I think 17 portraits for this collection. Okay. I need to lock in. I'm locking in, y'all.
Going through a handful of these portraits to give you an idea of how they evolved, but if you want to read about each one, I'll leave the site linked below, as well as a video from Blind Dweller who talks about each portrait in more detail. This is the first painting we see from Brian after he cut down on his medication, made on the 20th of April 1991. The portrait is a clear example of Brian dealing with some sensory overload. His paranoia had increased a great deal, and he was hearing things all the time, hence the rabbit ear. After this, Brian created a few pieces that contained less facial features and were more abstract. It wasn't until the 6th of May 1991 that he created this piece, a sort of return to form for Brian. The self-portrait was much clearer, but the imagery was still concerning. The journal entry he wrote was also a scattered collection of thoughts with some very strange ramblings. I feel like a target for people's cruel remarks. The people around me cannot understand how I was so stupid and cannot forgive me. Thus, I am a target.
This isn't incoherent. I can understand.
Nails in my eyes express that I cannot see, whereas other people seem to have extra sensory perception, and I am blind in this respect. Love hurts. Less than 2 weeks later.
Okay, love hurts is crazy. I don't understand that part. But the second half was a little more but this is I don't know. This is trippy, bro. Because you have to think in your head, he was really going through this. I recently just saw a video on, I think it was Instagram or TikTok. I don't know where it was. but it was like a person making a video of what it's like to have schizophrenia. For him in particular, I'm sure it could be different for different people, but like he had sounds playing all over the place, like you're seeing things, and it's like you don't necessarily see something like super clear, but it's like you see things and things are moving, you see faces all over the place. Bro, I can't even imagine that. And it's something where if you're aware of it and you can keep your mental fortitude together, it's something that you can probably get through. But it's something where you can easily fall off the deep end. Now you're having conversations with random sounds and everything in your head. Like, bro, I can't even picture that, bro.
Later, on the 18th of May, Brian created this, a surreal, significantly darker piece of work. At this stage, Brian had reduced his intake of medication to 1 antidepressant. He was sleeping less, and it was likely that he was beginning to spiral into a deeper depression. Again, this painting shows us a bullseye.
Oh. Okay, I thought... Wait, is this schizophrenia or depressants? Antidepressant? Or schizophrenia or depression? Or is it both? Holy shit. Hey, yo. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is... You can really tell, like, mentally he's breaking down. Because the other paintings are, like, pretty straightforward.
But this time, it was in his mouth, a metaphor for his inability to socialize. His brain was replaced by a mouth that he had no control over, a powerful way to express the helplessness of his mental state. In my opinion, this portrait was a real turning point in this series, a metaphorical point of no return. On the 23rd of May, Brian created this, another rare example of him creating a self-portrait that actually looks like him. But as you can see, he has once again replaced his brain with a mouth. He explained it in his journal by writing, "The blue of the portrait is there because I felt depressed through cutting back on the antidepressants. I was pleased that I was able to express such a purely mental concept as thought broadcasting by the simple device of turning the brain into a mouth that I painted it again. One is very much up against the almost impossible task of describing in paint that which is essentially totally invisible. Symbols come to be employed and the appropriate one must be found. Also, it should have a poetic charge attached to it. Yet still, people are too ignorant to see. It's...
Yeah, he also feels like no one, like, understands him, it seems like, which is pretty sad. And he's trying to express himself, but nobody is getting how he's expressing himself. Which, you have to kind of understand, it may be difficult if you're going through schizophrenia and depression. And you want people to be able to relate to that. That's kind of hard, you know what I mean? You're gonna have to explain it to people at some, like, for the most part. But it looks like, you know, his face is coming back to normal, but this mouth right here is kind of nuts. But if you hearing voices, bro, I can't talk to somebody or listen to somebody and do literally anything. I can't do 2 things at one time. So I can't imagine if you're always hearing, you know, random voices or little things in your head while you're trying to write something, do anything. You know what I mean? From that point on, it's like you can't really focus on anything because there's so much noise.
It's the 3rd time in this series we see Brian replacing his brain with something else, a practice that he developed throughout this series that turned out to be a very effective way to communicate the scrambled thoughts that were happening in his brain. Over a month later, on the 27th of June, Brian believed he was closing in on a painting that could truly express his schizophrenia. This is the painting he made around that time. In his journal, he expressed the following: "I am still at an acute disadvantage socially. Can this ever change, or will the anger always remain? I intend to record my progress with more self-portraits to add up when they are all joined together as an important document as to life. At the end of the 20th century, self-portrait will state depth what is to be human and schizophrenic." Unfortunately, we did not get more self-portraits. We did, however, get 2 more paintings in this series. A piece that showed us an array of text that said words like enemy, rival, and past, with the center text reading, "The cards are no good that I'm holding unless they are from another world." which is a lyric from a Bob Dylan song. After this, we got one final painting, a simple enough piece that showed us an array of colors, predominantly red and yellow. There were no journal entries for these two paintings, meaning we did not get any further context for the series, and we never will, because unfortunately, these paintings were discovered on the same day that Brian was. He took his own life on the 19th of July, 1991, and these were the last two things he ever created. This series is an intense, depressing, and expressive journey which reflected Brian's style of art and his mental struggles. It was not only his most popular series of work, but easily the one that connected the most with the people that saw it. He was frustrated and annoyed at his lack of success, and unfortunately, he achieved what he wanted to achieve after he had passed away. He was never able to truly see what his work meant to other people, but that doesn't invalidate it. It's an incredible series.
That really sucks. Because I would imagine if you came off of your drugs where you felt normal, right? Came off them purposefully in order to give these works of art, right? I would hope you would eventually finish and decide to go back onto the medication that was helping you. You know what I mean? But it seemed like he didn't even make it to that point because of how, scrambled everything was. That's pretty sad. He really gave his life to this art. 100%, fully gave his life to art. Because he literally hopped off the drugs in order to make art. And then because he did that, it ended up killing him. That's fucked up.
Of work and a major part of Brian's legacy, even though it did come at a damning price. Francisco Goya was a Spanish painter who was born in the mid-18th century. He was considered to be one of the most important artists of his generation and has gone down as one of the most impactful of all time. One of his most known pieces of work is a series of prints called Los Caprichos. These prints were packed with expressive imagery that showed the vices and debauchery of Spanish society at the time, which was a relatively consistent theme in his work. His pieces not only criticized society, but also government, war, corruption, and general ignorance. However, even though he was a prolific creator who had strong opinions, there aren't many documented conversations about his thoughts or his worldview, and this is because his personal life was filled with private battles pertaining to his health. In the late 1700s, he went completely deaf because of an illness that wasn't diagnosed in time. This began a series of health scares and illnesses that would plague the rest of his life. It also reflected in his art. Goya's work became slightly more sinister around this time, reflecting a nihilistic worldview that was gradually getting deeper and deeper. Well, when he was 73, he developed a serious illness and it looked like it would be the end of his life. However, a doctor who was a friend of Goya's, named Eugenio Garcia Arrieta, managed to nurse him back to health despite all odds. During this process, Goya was sure he was going to die but would live for another 8 years, and because of this, he created a portrait that showed him and his doctor together. The painting is simply titled Self-Portrait with Dr. Arrieta. But there are other people in the piece, dark shadowy figures that loom behind the two of them. This could be his family, a group of spectators, or it could be a reference to the afterlife, the place that Goya was sure he was going. Maybe these people weren't even in the room with them. Maybe Goya just felt their presence and felt as if he was going to be joining them soon.
Bro,
it's only speculation.
What the fuck, bro? Y'all see this? Hold up, let me show y'all. Bro, what the fuck is that? Bro, those are demons, gang. Cause you could, if you draw your family in the background, you could give them some more color, dog. You could not make them all black, make them like that. You know what I mean?
But many art critics have echoed the same idea. It's very obvious that death was on his mind. This is the only self-portrait in this video that includes more than one person, and it's for a very good reason. Although there are at least 5 figures in this painting, Goya might as well be completely alone. His eyes are barely open. He is essentially being held up by his doctor, and his hands are clenched tightly to his bedsheets, almost as if he is trying to clutch on to life itself. Out of all of the artists we have talked about, Goya is in the worst state physically physically, but his painting is arguably the best quality, and this is because he's the only artist who is painting his physical self deteriorating. His mental side is mostly intact. We can see that from the quality of the piece, but he's creating a depiction of a physical illness while everybody else was dealing with a mental one, and that's why I wanted to show you it. The brain is the artist's ultimate tool, and without it they are helpless. That helplessness can produce a new kind of art, a final attempt at recapturing what they once had. It's a depressing, nihilistic, gloomy area of art, but it only exists because the artist is still trying, still attempting to create and put something on a canvas that they are proud of. The true sorrow comes afterwards, when the canvas is blank, when there is nothing to draw or paint, when the artist's brain completely deteriorates. That's why these pieces should be looked at in a slightly more hopeful way. They are real, authentic attempts to create something despite the mental anguish the artist is going through. The darkest parts of these battles won't be seen on a canvas.
Sheesh. This was a really good video. I like watching stuff like this. I like not necessarily understanding, because there's nothing to understand. Like, I don't understand, what any of them were going through. But I do like, I'm a curious being. I like watching videos like this. I like I was about to say understanding again. I like seeing things like this and getting a perspective on things that I didn't think of or couldn't think of. You know what I'm saying? So it's pretty dope. I like the video. Anyway, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all that other shit, and I love you. Peace. Turn off.